Hi there. Welcome to Infinite Stories. This is the podcast where we sit down and interview everyday people just like you and me. This is your host, Mitchell Vine, and boy, do we have an incredible story for you. Let's jump into this week's interview. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today, AJ. Would you mind kind of introducing yourself and a little bit about the background of what you do right now?
Sure. I'm happy to. And thanks for having me, Mitch. I appreciate you, man. So I'm the CEO and founder of Love is the Answer. And it is a movement that is spreading throughout the United States and around the world. And the work that we do is simply teaching people how to love their neighbor. So it started back in 2012 when I was taking a walk in my own community and I got stopped, harassed by police for taking a walk in my own community. I was doing what is called walking while black. And that experience with one officer that turned into three officers on the side of a road thinking I was going to die on the side of that road that day because of the aggressiveness led to me making a film called Walking While Black, Love is the Answer. And that film wound up becoming a tool that is now being used by hundreds of police departments and community groups to improve not only police-community relations, but also public safety and just other societal ills that exist because of that lack of learning how to love. It's not taught in schools. It's not taught in most households. It's not taught in many churches. But it is the single most important thing that we can do, and really the thing that we're commanded to do, right? Love thy neighbor, right? So we're teaching it.
Man, that's incredible. Okay, well, let's go all the way back in your story, back to the very beginning, and then we'll work our way back up to where you are today and kind of see the gospel thread that's woven into the details. So what are some of the earliest memories that you have just growing up?
Well, my childhood really informed the work that I'm doing today. So the earliest memory that I have is at the age of around 5. And that memory is my mother taught me how to read and write at an early age. And my earliest memory is writing out a little one-man play to put a smile on her face, to make her laugh, to make her forget about the trauma of the night before. My mother spent many years being abused by my dad. So I grew up in a household that, although he did very well in business and took care of all the household needs and all of that, he was very abusive. And so it was a house filled with violence, filled with rage, filled with uncertainty. And that is my earliest memory, really at the age of 5, becoming a writer that dealt with healing trauma. And I didn't really put the two things together about my career path and where it started until really a handful of years ago when it hit me. I've been making films and TV shows, and I've published 4 books. I'm working on the 5th one now. I've written hundreds of articles in magazines and newspapers, and all of them have to deal with healing trauma in some way. And it hit me a few years ago that, wow, that's where it all started. Right at home as a kid, just intuitively trying to help my mom through a difficult time.
So would you say that would have been your first understanding of what sin was, just overall?
Oh, yeah, but I didn't recognize it as such, at that time. But the reality is I lived in a household that was filled with good and evil. My mother was, she was not perfect, but she was saintly compared to my dad. My dad was, like I said, a very violent, very aggressive person, threatened to kill all of us, tried to kill her several times, put her in the hospital more than a dozen times. And so I experienced heaven and hell in my household, and so I learned there that that God was truly in control, because if not for God's grace and blessing her with safety, and she would have been dead. I have no doubt,
Mm.
and probably myself and my three siblings as well. So
Mm.
yeah,
Wow. Wow. Well, then, kind of moving a little farther along in the story, through
yeah.
the middle school years and the high school years, were there any pivotal events that shaped your character?
Oh gosh, hundreds. Yeah.
Hundreds. All right. Well, give me a couple.
You don't have time for all of them, man. We'd be here until next week. Um, one of them was my sports. I gravitated towards sports as a place of refuge. And my coaches, I can't remember any of my teachers' names, but I can tell you every single name of my coaches,
Mm-hmm.
various sports. If not for my coaches, I would have been truly lost. So I gravitated towards sports. That's where I found a place to get away from all the stuff that was going on in my life. And I'm thankful that I chose that path, because it could have very well been I could have chosen drugs or gangs, or any other number of things to do. And yeah, sports kind of saved me, through my childhood years, and
Mm.
really kind of laid the foundation too for things that I carried on in my adult life. A lot of lessons that I learned on the sports field, and I bowled, I played basketball, I ran track, I played baseball, I played soccer, played football. I mean, I pretty much did it all if it had a ball. If it was on
Mm-hmm.
ice or in the water, I did swim, but I gravitated towards team sports with a ball. I was good.
Mm.
But the life lessons that I learned actually led to me writing my first book, which came out around 2010-ish, I believe, The True Champions 30-Day Challenge. And it was a 30-day devotional using sports-related stories, and it was a faith-based book. So that that really had carried a lot of weight, not only through my childhood, but becoming an adult and getting out into the workforce and so forth.
Mm. Typically, in those years, the middle school, the high school era, there's typically, uh, how do I say it? There's just lies that we start to believe, either about ourselves or about just the world around us.
Yeah.
Were there any lies that kind of stuck out to you in those times?
Yeah, so probably the biggest lie was something I was dealing with in my head for a while. So I accepted Christ at the age of 13. And by the age of 16, I really had a hard time trusting in God,
Mm.
because the lies that were swirling around in my head that were being reinforced by other people in my life, it was basically, how can you trust God? How can you trust God, your father,
Mm.
because your earthly father was so horrible? So how can you trust God the Father, right? And so by the age of 16, I turned and ran away from God the Father as hard and fast as I could. And
Mm.
I did that for the next 20 years. So from 16 to 36, I was at a place in my life where I just, I couldn't trust God. And I made a lot of bad decisions during that time. Had so many ups and downs. I mean, at 24, first of all, I went to the military, which was a really good decision, probably the best decision I ever made. So that was at 19. I served for 4 years from 83 to 87. When I got out, I had an opportunity to own a professional soccer team at the age of 24. And,
Mm.
and I accomplished that. So I became the youngest and the only black professional sports team owner in the country at that time. I found out it was a great way to lose money. That's a whole nother story. But but the, but the lie of you can't trust God, your father, because you couldn't trust your earthly father, was the biggest lie, that took me a long time to get
Mm.
over. And it really manifested in some deeply destructive ways. And I'm lucky to be here. at the age of 61, I'm lucky to be here.
Mm.
So, yeah, 36, I turned my life back over to Christ. And ironically, it was after seeing some kids, some high school kids at a summer camp, just really, really just sold out completely to God, and just living their lives in a way that I looked at them, at 36, and I was like, wow, that's what I was like. I got to get
Mm.
back. I got to get back to that. And so my life, little by little, became restored. And I'm happy, with where I'm at spiritually these days, and I'm able to help other people through some tough times that they might be experiencing.
Mm. So you kind of jumped around a little bit in those adult years after the military, but what
Yeah.
kind of led you up to that camp and that experience?
Um, my wife was volunteering at that camp, and so I went kind of reluctantly to check it out and see what was going on, and there was some things going on around that time that made it difficult for me, because we weren't going through a great time. We were having
Mm-hmm.
a rough time around that time. And so I went reluctantly, and it just kind of, it was good decision. It wound up sparking something in me that say, what, maybe if I turn my life back to God, and basically give God another chance, right?
Mm-hmm.
That maybe there's something there, and it wound up helping me in many ways, including my marriage. Which now we've been married for 30 years,
Um,
and things are good. Um, yeah, yeah.
Praise God. Praise God. So then after that camp moment, what happened in between there and leading you up to that moment with those police officers? How did your story get filled in those gaps?
Yeah, so it was about, I guess about 12 years maybe in between those times, because I was 48 years old at the time that incident happened. And I had been running a business, and I've started and owned several businesses, and always tried to make a difference with my work, whether it was sports related, because I've owned two professional soccer teams. I've done marketing businesses, and I've run events and things like that. 1999, I started a company called Eclipse Sports and Entertainment, which has now transformed into Eclipse Productions, which is production of television shows, films, music, and the publishing of those books. And I got to meet a lot of people all over the country. Some not so famous, some unknown, some incredibly famous, some very powerful. Some just starting out. And I found that there was a common thread, amongst all of them, all of them. No matter whether they're worth $10 million or negative $1,000, trying to find meaning in their life,
Mm.
looking for love, wanting security, you know. And so as a result of my travels and meeting all these different kinds of people, I wound up having, some very powerful, very famous people coming to me for advice. Man, AJ, you've been through so much. How do you do it?
Mm.
Because these were people that were, you'd know. So I'm not going to drop their names, but you'd know their names.
Mm.
And they were dealing with things and not knowing how to deal with them. And I would just share my faith with them,
Mm.
and just share my journey, the pain that I had suffered, the things that I had been through. And, they found that those stories, those experiences, that realness of knowing God, having a relationship with God the Father, was worth more than all the riches that they had in their bank account.
Mm.
Yeah.
Man, that's wild. It's so funny to think about how many people would be generally pretty envious of the rich and famous, if you will,
Yeah.
but really apart from Christ, And apart from the gospel, there's no hope whatsoever, and there is no meaning in life. And unless you experience that redemption, then you're just walking around. Maybe you can buy nicer food and nicer clothes, but beyond that, life is not better for you by any means.
Yeah,
Man.
yeah. I mean, I know people who own 10 homes, or I should say 10 houses, but have no home.
Mm,
Right.
mm-hmm. Man. So taking that idea, right, experiencing the redemption that you did, experiencing the gospel, how did the gospel help develop and motivate you in the businesses that you run and even like the productions that you're putting together? How did that bleed together?
Being out in Hollywood for a while, I had opportunities to get involved in projects that went against my conscience,
Mm,
and so I didn't do them. And there were times when I was dead broke. I mean, didn't have two pennies to scratch together, right? And I would turn down opportunities to do some work because it didn't sit well in my spirit.
mm,
And people thought I was crazy. They're like, "Man, what are you doing? You need the money." I'm like, "Well, I need my soul to be intact,
mm,
you know." And I'm glad I made those decisions, even though it made life tough. I mean, I was hanging out with people with, Porsches and Bentleys and houses in the hills and all that stuff, right?
mm,
But these were the very same people that were coming to me for advice about life, right? And they knew I was broke. They knew I was scraping to get by. And while they were asking me, "Why don't you take that job, dude? Why don't you do it? Why don't you do this project with me?" They were also saying, "How can you have so much peace?
mm,
I got everything. You got nothing. How can you be the one who's happy, who's filled with joy?" And the thing is, Mitch, I've never been somebody to say, I've never been one to kind of preach to people. I just try to live it out, you
mm,
know. So I feel, a lot of people get turned off, when somebody comes at them with, religion, when they're hit in the face with it. They don't want to
mm,
hear it, but they gravitate towards people who live it out. And everyone makes mistakes, and I make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. So I'm very real with people about that, that
mm,
I fall short every single day. I have I have struggles, I have demons that I deal with, I've got
mm,
PTSD and anxiety and depression from my time in the military and from childhood trauma. There's this thing called ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, that people talk about in the licensed clinical social worker and mental health profession. Well, I've got 7 out of 10. All
mm,
right, I've got 7 out of 10. Odds were that I was going to wind up in prison or dead. All right,
mm,
based on my past. All right,
mm,
I'm the only man in my family that has not spent time in prison, and
mm,
part of that was because of some of the life lessons that my older brother Abby, who did spend time in prison, imparted to me to help me get on the path, that I'm on now. One of the things that he always shared with me was, don't spend your time preaching to people. Spend your time loving people.
mm,
That's what's going to get through to them, and that's what really we're called to do, is, not
mm,
not dump people over the head with a Bible, but love them, be there for them, care for them, go to the places where, you know, some people won't go.
mm,
I'd much rather sit down. I don't drink anymore, but I'd much rather sit down at a bar, with somebody, talking with them about life,
mm,
about their experiences, and just be there with them, be there for them. Then, then go spend time with, 100 people who are, maybe living it out on the outside, but, you know,
mm,
hating the person who's different from them. There's just a lot of hypocrisy in the world, and I just feel like we just got to be a little bit more real, a little bit more open, a little more transparent, a little more loving with people. Accept people where they are. Don't tell them to change first before you come to church. Come as you are.
Mm,
Maybe we'd get a lot more people filling those seats. If
mm.
a lot more of us did that. Yeah.
Well, why do you think most Christians lean more towards preaching at people instead of loving people? Wouldn't loving people make not just more sense, but wouldn't it come across easier and be more welcome?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I said earlier that love is not taught in a lot of
Mm,
places, right? So a lot of times we have hurt people trying to help people. And it's easy to become judgmental when we're hurting and then we're reading a manual, of
mm,
how to do something, right? So we got to spend a lot of time working on ourselves and and just accepting, okay, we have faults just like everybody else, but let's just let's learn how to love people first, before we go out and try to fake it until we make it.
mm,
So I would love to see more schools teaching children how to love. No schools are teaching it now. If you look at curriculum, they're not. It's not in there. I'd love to see more ministries put more of a focus on simply loving your neighbor.
mm,
That it's not happening enough. So there's work to be done, in that
mm,
area. And the more we do that, the more I think things will change. And we see it playing out in the neighborhoods. We're seeing it playing out in social media. We're seeing it playing out in the news. We see it playing out in politics, in the House of Representatives and other places where we see leaders fighting all the time.
mhm,
A lack of humanity. And, not to get political, I'm talking about people on both sides of the political spectrum, the left and the right,
mm,
Republicans and Democrats, where there's so much finger pointing, there's so much hatred, there's so much, if it's not my way, it's the highway,
mm,
that we're missing out. If we just took the time to sit down and have real conversations and get to know people, that love that I talk about in our Love is the Answer movement, it's an acronym that has 4 easy steps that are not so easy if you don't practice them. But
mhm,
life gets a lot easier if you do, and it's learn about people, open your heart to their needs, volunteer to be part of the solution in their lives, and empower others to do the same. And
mm,
if people take those 4 action steps, learn about somebody, open your heart to their needs, feel some compassion and empathy, take that, what you learned, and volunteer to be part of the solution, do something for them
mm,
or with them to help them make their life better, and then empower others to do the same by spreading that. Life gets a lot easier, and ministry becomes a lot easier because we're not trying to force something down someone's throat or into somebody's mind. We're
mm,
actually meeting their needs, right? We're washing their feet. We're
mhm,
getting them water from the well, right? We're giving them that hug when they need it, right? That's what we're
mm,
called to do.
mm. Man, that's good. You touched on it a few minutes ago, but in most stories, there's typically mentors or guides that help the characters along through the story. You mentioned your older brother a little bit.
Yeah.
Were there any other mentors that kind of helped you through your story up through this, even with just learning to love other people?
Oh yeah. I've had plenty. One, I guess I will drop one name. There's a guy named Gary Player, who has won a few golf tournaments. He's an older guy. He's from South Africa. He fought for Lee Elder, an African American golfer, to be able to play in South Africa during the apartheid era. Gary's won some majors, and he's known as the Black Knight. He's a swashbuckling, incredible guy.
Mm.
Well, when I first got into the golf industry as a writer, I went to an event where he was opening up a golf course, and he's designed many golf courses around the world. So this one in particular, he was designing in Ocean City area of Maryland. And I was a younger guy, and I was the only black guy to walk into that room. I walked into the room, and it was like 50 or 60 old white guys, and then me. And Gary sees me from the other side of the room while he's talking with some other people. And he walks over to me and introduces himself to me. And he said, AJ, you're going to find that in this industry, there are going to be a lot of people who don't want you in the room. But I walked over here to tell you that you are welcome and you are needed. And if no one else shows you love, he said, the game itself will pay you back. And so I remembered that, and I had an occasion to see him and talk with him on a few other occasions, and I affectionately call him my golf father. So he's got a warm place in my heart. He's a great humanitarian. And there's actually a YouTube video of an interview that I did with him several years ago at Arnold Palmer's golf course, Bay Hill in Florida. If you just look up Gary Player, AJ Ali, Bay Hill, you'll see that interview. And we talked about humanitarian issues, and we talked about loving people and things like that. He was a great influence in my life, and continues to be through his actions. And there are many, many others, many others that have been men and women that have been great influences in my life. And I'm so thankful to be surrounded by people who have influenced me. And some of the people in my film the film that I made, Walking While Black, Love is the Answer, some of those folks have been great influences in my life. Chief Melvin Russell, former one of the chiefs of the Baltimore Police Department, came into my life at a very pivotal time, a time when I hated police because of the things that I had experienced. And he became a friend of mine during a time I was making a TV series, and we got to know each other. And I wound up calling on him for advice during times when I was getting death threats from other police for wanting to make a film about police brutality. And Melvin would always take my call, always give me solid words of advice. I never told him when I was on the verge of wanting to hurt somebody, but he always kind of said the right thing to talk me down from the place that I was, where I could have done something, really bad. And he's a dear friend and brother to this day, and he has a wonderful role in that film. There's other people in that film as well that mean a lot to me, including a younger guy by the name of Trey Carlisle, who was 16 years old when I met him. I instantly fell in love with this dude, and I had to put him in the film. So he is like little Martin Luther King Jr. and John Lewis, all rolled into one. And he became our first Love is the Answer fellow, and he's doing great things with a group called Music in Common now, where they're doing therapeutic work with people using music as the vehicle to bring people together and teach people how to love themselves. So I'm so proud of him, and he's built into me, and I've built into him as well. So that it's life is great when you surround yourself with people who inspire you to be a little bit better, and I try to do that every single day.
Yes, I love that. So then, taking all those experiences and all those different mentors and guides that have had such an influence on you, do you picture yourself as a mentor to the people around you as well?
Yeah, I do. I accept that, that torch. I run with it. It's a responsibility that we all have to be an influence in someone's life. And, we have a little thing that we develop called an LQ test. It's a love quotient, right? And it measures empathy and social responsibility. And it's something that, people can takes 5 minutes. And one of the questions in there is, Do you ever spend any time mentoring someone?
Mm.
And, that's something I highly encourage. Everyone should be doing that. Everyone should have a coach, right? So they should be a protege.
Mm.
They should have a mentor. And then everyone should find someone that they can mentor. That needs to be part of our lives. And if we do that, that's one of those areas of life where we build community, right? A lot of times people don't know their neighbors. They have a very close circle of friends. They don't know the people that are right next door to them.
Mm.
Look for opportunities to get to know your neighbors. Look for opportunities to love on them. Look for opportunities to become a mentor to someone in your neighborhood. Someone that you see every day or every week, that you can, just pull them up, hey man, how you doing? What's going on? You know, is there anything I can help you with? Be that person that they want to come to for advice.
Mm.
And that makes life rich and full, and it heals brokenness, and it builds bridges, and it changes people and changes communities. We need that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. Absolutely. Well, kind of shifting a little bit more into the curious side of things, I'd love to know if there were any influential books or podcasts or resources that have kind of helped you get from where you are to where you've been, I guess. I said that backwards, but I'm sure you got it.
Hey, sometimes it feels like getting, to where I am by going back to where I've been, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of introspection, probably too much, but I do, examine where I've been. And I'm a
Mm.
student of history as well. So I'm actually listening to an audiobook right now by a former military guy, Ty Sigilly. He is at West Point, been there for a long, long time. And he has a book out called Robert E. Lee and Me. And
Mm.
it's a book about not only Robert E. Lee and his life, but just about a lot of other military figures and racism in America and so forth. And he weaves in a lot of stories about what he experienced at West Point.
Mm.
And that one has been very influential for me. Here's a man who grew up idolizing Robert E. Lee and really didn't know a lot of the real history, behind the folklore and the building up of this military persona. And the
Mm.
more he learned, the more he realized that, the racial divide in America, and including at that great institution of West Point, is thick, and it's real, and it's destructive.
Mm.
And, and that there are people who worship people like Robert E. Lee more than they worship the Christ that they say they follow.
Mm.
You know, so just that's one of many books. I read a wide variety, of books. There's another book by Ice-T, the rapper, right? And and an actor. He's actually carved out a pretty cool acting career. I had the
Mm.
opportunity to meet him many years ago, back in 1992, and he gave me some really good advice, during that. He said nothing good happens after 10 o'clock. So
Sounds right.
yeah, he was right. I took that advice. Took a while, but I took that advice. But so my range of reading goes from the classical to to pop figures and so forth.
Mm.
But that book by Ty Sigilly that I'm going through right now is pretty impactful. There was another one called The Goal, which was about a manufacturing process. It might seem kind of boring, but that was something that really helped me in terms of putting structure into my life. And at
Mm.
the time, I had a manufacturing company that I owned, so it made a lot of sense for me to read that book back then. But that book really, I think, can help anyone who is looking for more structure, in their life, and how to make sense, how to break through bottlenecks and stuff like
Mm.
that. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Nice.
I could go
Nice.
on and on with. I mean, there's so many books that I've enjoyed. Yeah.
That's good. Well, I'm a book addict myself,
I
so I
see. I
completely
see.
understand. It's funny. I've got this office, and I have another office, and behind me on the second office is just board games, tons and tons and tons of
Okay.
board games. And
Okay.
so people always ask, like, "Why don't you have books behind you? Isn't that what you're supposed to have?" And I was like, I don't know. Depends on the day and what office I want to be in, I guess." So, well, that's incredible.
Yeah.
You are an author and you are also a filmmaker. So I'm
Yeah.
curious, which one do you gravitate towards most, books or movies?
Mm, depends on the day.
Mm,
Yeah. I don't have a favorite. I just like telling stories, and I like experiencing stories. So, my wife and I will watch 2 or 3 movies a week. For business, I watch some of them, for business, just
hmm
to see what people are doing and styles and things like that. But we just enjoy it. We just in a wide variety as well. Yeah, so I bounce back and forth. And with books, I prefer audio books. I might have
mm.
I might have books on my bookshelves, but very rarely do I get through an entire book in a month, or maybe even in a year. I just go back and forth, and because I have a very short attention span, I can sit down and
Mm,
watch a 90-minute movie. I can only sit and read a book for 15 minutes. But if I'm out walking for an hour, I'll
mm.
I'll pop the headphones in and I'll do an audio book, and that's my go-to. Yeah, I can get through a lot more
Nice.
that way.
Nice. I love it. So then, if you were to make a movie about your life, what would you want it to be called?
Man, Forrest Gump, but that's been taken. Um, I'm kind of like
Um,
Black Forrest Gump, I guess. Yeah. So yeah,
Love that. I could clearly picture what you meant by when you said that. I was like, oh, okay. I could see it. I could see it. Sounds like a movie that needs to be made. I'd watch it.
I'm kind of living out the story that I hope could be told one day, because we have this dream, this vision of creating a space of healing for people. We want to acquire a farm. My wife is battling cancer. She's living with stage 4 breast cancer.
Mm,
She's had cancer 3 times. My brother, my father, my grandmother, my mother, other people in our family, her mom, her dad, other people have died of cancer. So she's living with it. Stage 4, third time through it. A year and a half
mm,
ago, she had a brain tumor removed at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore.
mm,
There have been at least 2 times when we thought she wasn't going to make it. Once during her second cancer battle, and then there was moments during this last experience with the brain tumor. She's doing okay. She's in treatment. She will be
mm,
for the rest of her life. She's every 3 weeks she goes in for an infusion. She takes chemo pills every day. I have dealt with suicidal thoughts. I tried to commit suicide when I was in my early 20s, while I was in the military. I deal with nightmares and other things as a result of the military service. I wake up from nuclear devastation dreams, nightmares
mm,
from time to time. Served at a nuclear missile base. Had some horrible experiences that led to PTSD. So she deals with things as a cancer patient. I deal with
mm,
things as a disabled veteran. We are looking to acquire a farm that can become a healing place for cancer patients, for veterans, for first responders, because
mm,
I've learned in the past 10, 12 years of doing this work how much they go through, how much
mm,
trauma that is unaddressed, how many environments at work are toxic and don't afford them the opportunity to care for their wellness. Think about this, Mitch. Think about a cop going to work, right? Kissing his family goodbye, going to work, sees someone who's just been shot and killed, right? The next call that officer gets, domestic violence,
mm,
right? Like an hour later, they're breaking up a fight between a couple, right? 2 hours later, they're dealing with maybe someone who's suicidal,
Mm.
right? And then their supervisor asks them, "Hey, are you okay?" And they say, "Yeah, boss, I'm good." Then they go home. They're hurting. They don't want to talk about it. They shut down. They drink,
Mm.
you know, maybe do some drugs to numb the pain, right? They're thinking, I can't go see mental health because I might lose my gun, my badge. They might put me on desk duty, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's everybody else going to think? They're going to think I'm weak, right? So there's a cycle, a vicious cycle that goes on. And I've learned that right now, this very minute, there are tens of thousands of cops out there right now serving their community. They're experiencing that right now. They
Mm.
had a really bad day yesterday. They couldn't talk about it with their family. They don't want to go get mental health support because they're afraid of losing their job, because the culture does not allow them to be well, right?
Mm.
So they go back to work. They're at work right now. Someone out there right now is taking out their pain on somebody else. So I want to create a space where people like that can go and get the help that they need,
Mm.
and get healed, be around horses, and be in an organic garden, growing some radishes or tomatoes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Alongside someone, next to someone, digging in the dirt with them who maybe spent 5 years in prison for robbing somebody. And those two build a relationship, not as, cop and formerly incarcerated person, but as human beings
Mm-hmm.
trying to find their way, right? Where a place where people can go and do art therapy and music therapy and read a book, you know,
Mm.
paint a picture, take a walk in the woods, right? Get professional help while they're there, and just heal. I think that kind of a place is needed in every community in America, but we have a vision of creating a space like that in Maryland, and we're looking to do that as soon as possible. And I've had people tell me, man, you guys are in your 60s, and you both are dealing with, health, issues. How are you going to do
Mm.
something like that? Well, we're still here, bro.
Yep.
You know,
Still got breath.
we ain't gone yet, So as long as we're here, we're going to try to make that kind of a difference.
Mm.
And that's, hopefully, when I'm dead and gone, maybe, 50 years from now, somebody will say, hey, wow, that's a pretty good story.
Mm.
Maybe we ought to make that movie. Because
Mm-hmm.
we're going, Lord willing, we're going to get that done. And it's going to be a place where people like us
Mm.
can go and get the help they need, right? Coming back
Mm.
to love your neighbor. We want to create a space where that can happen.
Mm. Okay, that right there. I have that same kind of desire, but for a different group of people. But what I would like to know is how would you encourage and challenge someone who has an idea or a dream or a desire to do something like that that just goes against culture, goes against the norm and everything, and just challenges things, but they're scared or intimidated to do it? What would you say to them?
Just do it, baby. Just do it. Just get out there and do it. I spent a lot of years when I was younger worrying about what other people thought, and wondering what would happen if I failed.
Mm.
So there's a lot of things I didn't do as a young person because of that, because I let things hold me back. When I broke free of that, I was able to go out and do things that people thought, man, he ain't got no sense doing that, but he did it. How in the world did he get that done? Right? So if you try something and you don't succeed, so what? Get up, dust yourself off, and try it again, or try something else.
Mm.
It's not going to be the end of the world if you fail. We look at people who are like, really strong, muscular, the way they got there was through failure. Muscle itself does not grow unless you push it to failure,
Mm.
right? You're creating little tears in there. And as they repair themselves, you get stronger. We are
Mm.
just like that, right? We cannot do anything without pushing ourselves to failure. And I'm not saying be reckless, be wise about it,
Mm.
measured, right? but don't be so afraid that you can't accomplish. I see this all the time with would-be writers. I've met thousands of people that have books inside them that will never get written, never get published, and they will die and take those stories with them to their grave, right?
Mm.
So what I tell people when it comes to writing is write a page a day. I don't care what you write it on. It can be, you can have 7 days and you can write about 7 different subjects. I don't care. Write a page a day. And even if you're writing like all over the place, one day you're writing about one thing and the next day you're writing about something else, at some point you're going to have enough volume for a book,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if think about if you just wrote on one subject, 1 page a day for a year, that's 365 pages. All right. Once you get it edited down, that's enough for a book. Literally, you
Mm-hmm.
can write a book a year, right, for the rest of your life, right?
Mm.
So write a page a day if you're a writer. If you got another idea about something, study, meet people who are doing it, watch YouTube videos,
Mm-hmm.
go to workshops, do something every day to get yourself in the mindset of accomplishing that goal. And at some point, you got to stop planning and you've got to do it, right?
Mm.
Nothing starts out perfectly.
Mm.
You know, do it. If you fail, so what? Get up, brush yourself off, keep on doing it until you get it right. You're never going to make it perfect, right? So why
Mm.
wait? Just get it started. Go for it.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely, man. Well, I only have one last question then, technically, for you. Is there anything else that you sense the Holy Spirit wants you to share on behalf of anybody who'd be listening to this?
I just want to reinforce that whole thing about love your neighbor. It's the simplest yet hardest thing in the world to do. It's the hardest thing in the world to do because there are a lot of spiritual forces that don't want us to do that,
Mm.
that will tell us that that's weak, that will tell us that those people don't deserve it,
Mm-hmm.
that will tell us that we're too busy, right? Any excuse not to do it. I want to challenge anybody who's watching this. If there's anybody left still watching it, right? Do it. I know people, that people like 5-second clips, right? Just a little bit
Yep.
longer.
Yep.
If you're still watching, there's a reason. And that reason is you need to hear this. There's
Mm.
somebody in your life right now that you need to love. Somebody in your life right now that needs someone to tell them that they're worth it, that they should live another day.
Mm.
Try that. And if it's you, you're worth it. Mitch, man, you're worth it. I
Mm.
love you, man. You're doing great work. There's a reason why you're here. You're making a difference. You know, keep doing
Mm.
it. Keep reaching out. Keep loving on people. You're doing great stuff.
Mm.
Right? Somebody needs to hear that today. Be love.
That's good.
Yeah, be
Yeah.
that person that gives them that love that they need.
Mm.
That's it. That's what it comes down to.
Man, you couldn't mic drop harder than that, man. Oh man, this has been so good, AJ. This is so encouraging to me, that's for sure. And
Thank
I
you.
know that whoever is listening to this, that's exactly who God sent it to, and I trust that the work is being done in their heart. So that's
Amen.
good. I have an extremely silly way that I like to end the podcast,
Okay.
and that is with a high five with my guest. But we're obviously through technology, and so why don't you pick a number between 1 and 10? We'll
Okay.
count down from that, and then we'll high five the camera to make it look like we're high fiving each other.
All right.
All right.
How about the number 8?
8. I like it. I honestly don't think I've had an 8 yet. So you were the first, my friend. That's awesome. All right. So I'm going to count down for us. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much for listening to this week's Infinite Story. If it resonated with you, send it to someone you think would be blessed by it. If you would like to share your story, please reach out to us at infiniteideas.studio. You never know how far the impact of your story can reach. Take care now.